Republicans push to legalize property owners killing homeless people in Kentucky. In Kentucky, politicians are preparing to vote on a law that would authorize the use of force against unhoused people who are found to be camping on private property. What's up, everybody? Thanks for clicking this video. Thanks for tuning into my channel. My name's Simon Hill, Black American from Louisiana, coming to you live from Budapest, Hungary. Now, often I catch myself daydreaming, wondering what my life would be like if I happened to move back to the US. Now, I have no plans of being homeless, and I don't think that will happen to me, but only God knows what will happen to any of us. All of us could fall on hard times, and in a country as rich as America that provides minimal to no safety nets for most of its citizens, it could happen to any of us. Trust me and believe. Now, I wonder what my life would be like in the US, and then I see the news about what's happening in the US, and I say, thank God I am in Europe. Thank God I am abroad. Thank God I have the opportunity to live wherever I want, to work online, and not have to be subject to these draconian laws that continue to be pushed by a certain party, a conservative party in the US that is hell bent on making life harder for average US citizens. And rather than helping the least of us, the party that claims to be the representative of Christians, Christianity, and Jesus' message continues to make policies that are absolutely horrid for the people. This was published on January 22nd, 2024 on Vice.com, written by Roshan Abraham. Let's get into this story. Republican politicians in Kentucky are rallying behind a new bill that would authorize the use of force and potentially deadly force against unhoused people who are found to be camping on private property. The bill would also criminalize unsanctioned homeless encampments and restrict cities and towns from preempting state laws. Yep, that sounds Christian. Yep, that sounds like minimal government. That sounds like something that's allowing more people to be free. Yep, that is the Republican Party. That is the conservative party. If you are a black Republican, and I hope the majority of my audience is black, you have to really consider, who are you voting for? Do you think your guy Trump will be against this law? Do you think anybody in your party who you advocate for will be against this law? No, the Republicans are lockstep in line together to make America worse for the average American. The bill, known as the Safer Kentucky Act, or HB 5, would target homelessness, drug possession, and mental illness by drastically increasing criminal penalties for a range of offenses. Introduced last week by Republican State Representative Jared Bauman. It already has 52 sponsors in Kentucky's House of Representatives. A vote is scheduled for this week. I will be checking up on this story, and I hope to find out that they rejected this law because it's absolutely horrid. You know, Kentucky is a poorer state in the nation, but it is still wildly wealthy compared to the rest of the world. There are some U.S. states like Mississippi that have a higher GDP than some European nations. Yet and still, Americans, instead of redistributing the wealth to make it better for the average American, to help the homeless, to help get people off the streets, to provide more housing for people, we instead choose to kill them. Of course, America. Advocates are most alarmed by one aspect of the Safer Kentucky Act in particular, an anti homeless provision that would authorize violence by property owners on people camping on their property. The bill says the use of force is justifiable if a defendant believes that criminal trespass, robbery, or unlawful camping is occurring on their property. Now, I have said before that I am borderline communist, if not a socialist, something like that. And listen, the love of private property is something that is ingrained in a capitalist society like America. Americans are all about their personal freedoms, and what you have is yours. My castle, my home, my car, that sort of stuff. And I can understand somebody wanting to defend their home. Listen, I am not against people defending their families, defending what they work so hard for. If you slaved away to buy a home in rural Kentucky or in anywhere in America, you do have the right, I would say, to defend it. But let's say you have a second property. Let's say you're a wealthy person and you have some vacation property that is mostly abandoned throughout the year, and you find out that there are people squatting in your property. Should you just be able to run in that house and just lay out anybody you find like the Terminator or some type of homeless person exterminator. No, no, of course not. And if you were so happen to come home one day and find a homeless man sleeping in your garage, should you just be able to pull out your pistol and just lay that person out? No, absolutely not. That's insane. No, it's insane. You could possibly talk to that person, chase them off, something like that. How many times do we hear about homeless people breaking into people's houses and killing those people? No, we almost never hear those stories. But what do we hear every single year? What is a American ritual? Mass shootings in the US at our schools every single year. Our children are slaughtered, and Americans don't want to give up the guns. They don't want to have more gun restrictions, anything like that. We can allow more guns to permeate in society, allowing more of our children to be slaughtered, more people to commit suicide, more accidental homicides. All that stuff can continue to happen. But the idea of homeless people just so happening to squat somewhere because they need somewhere to stay or need somewhere to sleep in a state like Kentucky, which is richer than most of the other nations in the world, we still say, yep, that's okay. That's okay. The Republican Party at its absolute best. Going to continue here. In addition, it says that deadly physical force is justifiable if a defendant believes that someone is trying to dispossess them of their property or is attempting a robbery or committing arson. Language that could also have ramifications for tenants overstaying their lease. So if you're a broke American and you are being evicted from your apartment, the landowner, the homeowner, could come in and murk you if he really feels like it. If you refuse to leave or if you ask for more time to leave and you don't get it, that person could murk you in Kentucky if this bill is passed. Mm. We're going to get people killed. That is just the unfortunate act. Lyndon Pryor, CEO of the Louisville Urban League, a nonprofit community service organization, told Motherboard, "We have decided that as a society, some people are not worthy of human respect and dignity, and we are able to treat them in completely inhumane ways." Shout out to the Urban League. It's one of the oldest, mostly black led organizations that is fighting for racial justice, civil justice, and generally all Americans' rights. And this is a tradition of black Americans in the US. We continue to fight and advocate for all Americans because we see through the hypocrisy of America. All this wealth, all this power, all this privilege that America has, yet and still we think it's better to murk the homeless than to actually house the homeless. Absolutely insane. Shout out to the Urban League for standing up and fighting against this bill. Uh, and by the way, we have to remember that a lot of black people are homeless. I think a disproportionate number of America's homeless are black and other minorities as well. So if you're a black Republican or a black conservative watching this and you say, well, if somebody were sleeping in my home, I definitely would murk them out. Listen, man, you might be murking somebody who looks like you, looks like your brother, looks like your daddy, looks like your cousins or something like that. We should not be looking at the homeless as less than human, as people that we can easily just get rid of with a bullet. Absolutely not. The bill contains many hallmarks of a template produced by the Cicero Institute, a libertarian think tank founded by Palantir co founder Joe Lonsdale, which has been drafting and lobbying for anti homeless bills across the country. Cicero's model legislation criminalizes public camping and restricts funding for evidence based permanent supportive housing. An earlier version of the Kentucky bill restricted federal funding to permanent supportive housing if it did not mandate treatment, but that provision was removed after criticism. So this is insane. So in the bill, they wanted to add the idea that people would be able to get, some sort of housing, some sort of relief. But then they took that out. They absolutely took that out. And why is this guy who's a billionaire campaigning so hard against the homeless? You're a hater. You're absolutely a hater. I know a lot of people believe that, people only get hated on when they're successful or when they have money, but you can be hated on just for being broke in America. It's expensive as hell to be broke in America, and everybody is against you if you're broke in America. Absolutely insane. Yet no other bill modeled after Cicero's template sanctions the use of force against homeless people, as the Kentucky bill does, a provision advocates have called alarming. This is teeing up vigilantism against people experiencing homelessness on a scale that we've never seen before, said Eric Tars, the senior policy director at the nonprofit National Homelessness Law Center. It's a really concerning escalation. Tars added that it was unclear how much influence Cicero had on the use of force provision, which may have been added by local lawmakers, but predicted the Institute would support the legislation nonetheless. The Safer Kentucky Act would sentence people convicted to 3 violent felonies to mandatory life without probation or parole. It would also make it illegal to release anyone from prison, whether on parole, probation, or for conditional release, for the entirety of their sentence if they were convicted of carrying out a crime using an illegally obtained firearm. Once again, I understand a Republican or any Kentuckian saying that they want to have a safer city, safer state, etc. But over criminalizing people, throwing people in jail and forgetting the key, putting the key under the mat, whatever, throwing away civilians is not the way to make a better society because unfortunately, it's a drain on society. We pay more and more money to these jails. We give more and more money to private contractors to build private prisons. We create a society of people who are permanently policed like black Americans or over policed like black Americans. And let us not forget, Kentucky is in the deep south, red state, super, super conservative. So I'm pretty sure, without looking at the statistics, a disproportionate number of black men are kept in the Kentucky jails. And this sort of law would throw even more black men in the Kentucky jail system, criminalizing them and that sort of stuff. And violent felonies, of course, nobody should be committing violence and nobody should be the victim of violence. And of course, the state does have a right to protect its citizens and to keep violent people off the streets. But there should be some rehabilitation for people. We shouldn't just say, oh, you're a violent person, let's do away with you forever. We need to have psychological treatment in the jails. People need to have access to job training in the jails because a lot of the times the people that are committing these sorts of felonies are doing them out of desperation. We should not forget that. This is the true Christian thing. There are people who will not like my take on this. There are some conservatives or Republicans who would say this is wildly stupid. Simon, you are wildly stupid. But what would your guy Jesus say? Would your own Lord and Savior, your Messiah, Jesus Christ, say that we should kill the homeless? Would he? Would he? That's not the Jesus that I know. Anyway, I'll continue here. Additionally, the bill would increase involuntary commitment of people with mental illness, criminalize people who possess even small amounts of fentanyl, and ban bail payments over $5,000 by charitable organizations. Now, that's just sick. At that last part, banning people from bailing people out, insane. One section of the bill also makes public camping a Class B misdemeanor on the second offense. HB 5 permits, but does not mandate local governments to set up sanctioned public camping areas and empowers the Attorney General to bring a lawsuit against any local entity that tries to preempt the law by decriminalizing unsanctioned public camping. But advocates who spoke with Motherboard were most concerned about the anti homelessness provision and questioned why a homeless policy ended up in a criminal justice bill at all. We are baffled by why the state legislature would want to include homelessness in this broad ranging bill. Purportedly about public safety, Catherine McGreeny, director of communication for the Coalition for the Homeless Kentucky, told Motherboard, we would urge any elected official to propose solutions against the root cause of homelessness. Yeah, being homeless in itself should not be a crime, and it is not a crime. It is actually a tragedy. Once again, it's a tragedy that in the US we have all this wealth, and yet and still we have a housing shortage. Rents are through the roof. There are so many background checks and so many things that you have to go through to actually get an apartment. They do credit reports on people sometimes just for getting an apartment. That's why I like living in Europe. I was able to get this very nice, very spacious apartment for 570 euros a month with nothing more than the money I had. And that's all you should be able to do to get an apartment. It should not be super hard. There shouldn't be all these other checks and requirements that people have to go through to get homes in the US. Background checks, credit reports, employment history, and that sort of stuff. Listen, if you got the money, if you got a job, that should be enough to be able to get a home because having a home is a right. It is not a privilege. I'm going to continue here. McGreeny said that the coalition had been following the bill in earlier forms specifically because it was based on a template by Cicero Institute, as the think tank opposes the evidence based housing first approach, which is rooted in the idea that unhoused people need permanent, stable housing before they can address any underlying problems exacerbating homelessness, which is absolutely true. Listen, if you don't have a permanent house, if you're constantly worrying about where you're going to eat or where you're going to sleep that night, you will not have the ability to be able to focus at work. You will not be able to actually go out and try to get a job because what you are doing is constantly on the wheel. And we cannot forget that a lot of homeless people have drug addiction, mental health illnesses, and in a country that does not guarantee universal health care, in a country where getting any sort of medical treatment, whether it be for your physical body or for your mental health, is absolutely hard and ungodly expensive, we should not make it so much harder for people just to be able to get a home. We should guarantee universal health care, guarantee universal housing, or at least make it much easier for people to get housing. Going to continue here. Housing First programs in Louisville have had a 97% success rate when it comes to moving people from unsheltered homelessness into permanent housing, McGeaney said. But she added that most people don't recognize the success of these programs because permanent supportive housing and low income housing in general is underfunded. I went to Louisville one time, the home of Muhammad Ali, one of our greatest heroes. It's actually a really cool city, really a lot of rolling hills. I think there's a river that runs through there as well. Really cool place. I like places that have cold winters, hot summers, that sort of stuff. Once again, I visualize myself living in America, going and seeing the rolling hills of Kentucky, the jagged Rocky Mountains in Nevada, and stuff like that. But then I remember, oh, yep, America wants to kill the homeless people. I can't live in a country that wants to kill homeless people. Now, some people might point out, oh, Hungary has some draconian laws. Hungary is bordering on not being a democracy. Hungary is a place that has a lot of corruption and things like that. Yet and still, it's a livable place. It's a society that somewhat cares about their citizens. They guarantee universal health care here and that sort of stuff. It's not a society where everybody's strapped with a weapon, where there are mass school shootings every single week. No, 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 no. We cannot compare any European nation to the US because while the US may be richer than most European nations, it is definitely not safer and it is definitely not a more fair or equal society at all. I'll continue here. 1,700 people moved to supportive housing in Louisville last year, McGeaney said, but 4,000 Louisville residents entered homelessness in the same year. The coalition has access to these numbers because they are Louisville's local continuum of care coordinator. Similar to many major cities, Louisville has seen an uptick in homeless encampments in the past few years, as affordable housing has become scarce and shelter capacity hasn't been able to keep up. It's not the case here that people just aren't choosing options that are available to them. We don't have enough options, McGeaney said. But the inclusion of anti homeless provisions in a large bill with other sections ostensibly focused on public safety may mean that many in the public do not know what lawmakers will be voting on. In a hearing in Kentucky's House of Representatives on Thursday, community supporters of HB 5 were mostly families of crime victims who advocated for provisions unrelated to homelessness. Several family members tearfully recounted the story of a woman who died in a car crash that they said was caused by someone released on bail. Another woman said the bill would have prevented the killing of her husband, a police officer, at the hands of someone who possessed a firearm at a traffic stop. None of the community members supporting the bill at Thursday's hearing mentioned homelessness. So, once again, in America, we have so many tragedies that are related to firearms, yet and still Americans are more focused on criminalizing getting people out on bail or criminalizing people having weapons in the car than actually having weapons at all. It's such an American complex. It's such a how can I say a distortion, a disease of the mind that Americans are infected with. Because if you ask any European, hey, should every citizen in your European nation like Slovakia or Germany be able to get a gun? They would all say no. In America, they would say, hell yeah, everybody has the right to have a gun. But the rest of the world looks at us crazy. The rest of the world looks at us crazy at how we allow guns to proliferate in society. And while it is a tragedy for anybody to lose a husband, daughter, son, mother, wife, friend to gun violence, it is a crime in itself and it's a tragedy in itself that we continue to allow guns to permeate. But most Americans ain't ready to hear that. Most Americans still buy into the belief that the gun makes us free and we need to kill the homeless people. which is absolutely insane. The Kentucky Fraternal Order of Police, FOP, the state's largest police union, voiced broad support of the legislation at the hearing. I think it's time that the FOP took a stand and became more vocal, Ryan Straw, vice president of the union, said. He called bail reform an unmitigated disaster and said passing the legislation would signal that Kentucky lawmakers support the police. Okay, once again, I really hate how the Republicans always try to sneak in some dirty little legislation in their big bills. And once again, people do have the right to be protected, and the police deserve the right to be protected too. I am not against police. I am not here bashing on police. I believe that police are working class people, and every working class person should be able to go and do their job free from danger. Same as anybody else. Same as me as an English teacher. The same as me. The same as the police. Right. But once again, this has nothing to do with people being able to get out on bail, which is a constitutional right. It has nothing to do with people, being homeless, which is a tragedy that can happen to any of us. What this is about is the guns that continue to permeate. But the Republicans and conservatives consistently sneak in little dirty stuff into their trick bag of bills that allow people to get caught up in this BS in America, where it becomes harder for average citizens to live. Representative John Blanton, a former police officer, said at the hearing that people were grumbling and griping about aspects of the bill, but asked people to listen to the true experts on safety, by which he meant police officers. Quite frankly, I think you don't go far enough, Blanton said about the bill. Representative Nima Kulkarni, one of 20 Democrats in Kentucky's 100-person House of Representatives, brought up the provisions on homelessness and use of force during property crimes, saying it could lead to vigilantism by store owners who suspect a customer of stealing. What this bill will do is criminalize our homeless people, as well as mentally ill people and people with drug addictions, Kulkarni said. Representative Steve Doan, a Republican, did not take issue with criminalization of public camping, but voiced concern at the hearing that the state did not have enough homeless shelters. If we're going to criminalize street camping, let's make sure these people have some place to go. Okay, a Republican with a heart. I knew in that icy chest of yours there was still something bumping and beating that pumped blood that was compassionate. George Eklund with the Coalition for the Homeless also testified that there are entire swaths of our counties that have no shelter at all, but was strongly against criminalization of public camping. Shamika Parrish Wright, director of Vocal Kentucky, a nonprofit organization focusing on mass incarceration and homelessness, who is also a newly elected council member, said at the hearing that Kentucky is poor and Kentucky is criminalizing poverty. Parrish Wright, who said she had experienced homelessness personally, added, I understand what it feels like to be out and not have a place to go. I don't remember exactly the study, but it says like something that like 1 in 7 Americans will experience homelessness once in their life, sleeping in your car, staying at a friend's house, hell, even, sleeping on a park bench. This is something that a lot of Americans go through, and there's too much shame and stigma tagged to homelessness, when the stigma and shame should be on a society that cannot provide enough housing or access to housing to Americans. Democrats at the hearing, including Cole Carney, asked the bill's authors for data to support the claim that it would increase public safety or that criminalization would reduce homelessness. Bauman, the bill's author, said he had the data in front of him and could present it after the hearing, but cited no numbers. With 52 co sponsors and 78 of 100 seats in the House held by Republicans, it is likely that the bill will pass the House in some form, although changes were still being made to the legislation on Thursday. The bill would still need to pass the state Senate, a body that is also controlled by Republicans. This is why it's very important for people to get involved in their local elections and local governments and stuff like that, because I believe the majority of the states in the US have Republican controlled legislatures, which allows these crazy bills to pass, like in Florida, where they want to teach that slavery was a good thing for black people, or they want to ban teaching black history in Missouri and that sort of stuff. These laws can pass and those sorts of things will continue to happen in the US as long as the conservative right-wing Republican nuts control the legislatures in so many houses. Of course, we have things that we have to fight against like voter suppression and gerrymandering where these Republicans want to draw up districts in a way that they will always win, but we have to fight back against the cheating that they do because when the majority of people vote in a place, most of the times we get left-leaning policies that people actually want. But unfortunately, a minority of people are controlling the majority in this republic that we have. Representative Lindsey Burke, a Democrat, introduced an amendment on Thursday that would remove the public camping ban from the bill, but it's unclear how much support the amendment has. Advocates say that the process of writing the legislation was rushed and that organizations opposed to the bill did not know that the Thursday hearing was happening until the last minute. Things are being hurried along and ramrodded through in the hopes that people aren't going to be able to read the legislation. Pryor, with the Urban League, said, so far, attempts by advocates to change the legislation have not been fruitful, according to Pryor. There hasn't been much in the way of support and change, he said. Those who have voiced concern still either voted for the passage out of committee or voted present. So, once again, a crazy story from America, making me very, very glad that I am now in Europe. And I wish that most Americans would wake up, get involved in their local politics, and get these crazy Republicans out of office and actually try to do something in America to make it more affordable, more livable, more safe for everybody, police and citizens. Everybody should be able to live a happy, healthy, and ballin' life in the richest country in the world. Yet and still, we see people push through bills, try to create a society where being down on your luck is a crime and you deserve to get murked for that. Absolutely insane. I'll be staying in Hungary for the time being until y'all figure it out in Kentucky. Peace to everybody who watched this video all the way through. Leave a comment, like, share this video, and peace.